Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call.
Okay. Representative Andrew?
Here.
Representative Brown?
Here.
Representative Connolly? I think she's here.
She's here.
Yep.
Representative Harshman?
Excused.
Representative Nyman?
Here.
Representative Newsom?
Here.
Representative Obermuller?
Here.
Representative Summers?
Here.
Chairman Paxton?
Here. Welcome, everyone. I guess we know how to get a crowd, don't we? We're going to be a little out of order today. I'm just going to announce it up front. We're going to have our good senators present the bill, and then we have a pretty extensive amendment, and I'm going to ask the bringer of that amendment, Representative Summers, to present that so that people will have an opportunity, the public will have an opportunity to comment on the entire bill, not just the bill, but also the amendment. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the public comment that we need. So that's going to be the order. So with that, welcome, senators. Senator Driscoll, I believe you're up first.
Thank you, Chairman Paxton. I bring to you Senate File 62, Civics Transparency Act. And I don't know at what point we have an amendment on it that came in that I think I can go ahead and let Senator Scott start with, because it actually helps with my explanation of the bill. It shortens it up a whole lot.
Okay. Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
the amendment was put on in the standing committee, and it does two things. The first thing it does, well, it shows in the title, but in lines, page 5, lines 8 through 23, delete entirely, page 6, page 7. What we're doing is we're deleting out a provision that the committee has seen before on how to teach equality. That provision has not gained great traction yet. I think it's a good idea, but it hasn't gained enough traction to be helpful to the bill, so we took it out. So that portion is out of the bill. The second thing we did, Mr. Chairman, was we heard a fair amount of testimony in the Senate committee that the bill might put an undue administrative burden on the classroom teachers, and we don't want to do that. We thought that some of the claims were significantly exaggerated, but we don't want to take a chance at putting an administrative burden on the classroom teachers to implement this act, which we think was very good. So what we did was we put a delayed effective date from 2022 to 2023 in, and the purpose for that, Mr. Chairman, was to allow some time for people to actually look at it with the prospect of having to actually implement the bill, so they wouldn't be just against, but would come with specific examples and specific things where we might be putting too much burden on, and we could examine them. And my preference, Mr. Chairman, would be to do it during the interim. And I think this issue has got enough traction and is important to enough people that it is worth, whether the bill passes or not, it is worth spending some time in the interim on this whole business of transparency. Because frankly, I think there's probably some very real problem out there that the transparency will solve. And there's also, I think we were picking up that there's some rumors out there of what might be there that are starting to erode people's confidence in our public schools. And I think we need to, I think the transparency is a good remedy on that. So that's what that particular amendment does. It gives us a year with a hopefully enacted piece of legislation where people can say, okay, if this goes into effect, what really is it going to force me to do? and we can find any modifications that would need to be made, Mr. Chairman. So that was the purpose of the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Senator Driscoll?
Thank you, Chairman Paxton and committee. I thank you very much for the opportunity to present this. Seems like when I come in front of your committee, I've got a lot of people always show up, and I'm sorry to do that to you, but I think they're important issues. And with that, I'm going to talk about what the bill does and doesn't do, and then I'm probably going to go down a path you may need to rein me in a little bit on, because I'm very disappointed in part of how we got here. So what this bill does is you walk through it, and after you're done with the amendments, it's got just a couple sections, and they're going to be affected by the amendments. So I'm going to go over them pretty fast. We kind of know where we're heading on it. But first, we moved the effective date out to give it time. The next one, you go to page 3, and it talks about lists of learning materials, and it's a shall. It stays on the website. And middle of the page, separate reporting of individual components, that's fine. You work through it. You end up on page 5, and the other shall is publish a list of instructional activities by the school boards in accordance with it. The rest of the bill's gone, and it's really interesting, because what this does is the lobbying you've all heard and what everybody got whipped into a frenzy over was that teachers had to present everything they were teaching prior to teaching it. It's not what the bill says. And this was the action alert was put out and said, come fight this, because we're going to make you put everything up ahead of time. Bill says July the preceding year, after it's done. And it's really hard for me. So as you go through it, what this bill does and doesn't do. And you've all been lobbied, and so have all the people. By the way, for those of you online, I'm Ogden Driscoll, Senator from Senate District 1, that brought this. For the teachers that are listening out there and the parents, this bill doesn't affect curriculum in any way. Doesn't tell them what to teach, how to teach it, what materials to use, what materials not to use. Doesn't require posting of any materials that students bring to class or anything they've got onto on the website. Allows you till July to post the materials. And what this bill is what the title says. Transparency. And what is transparency, folks? Is transparency, as has been posted on a site, look in your kid's backpack, ask your kids, yeah, that's part of it. But the process that's been given to us is this. Go see your teacher. If you don't get what you want, go to the administrator. If you don't get that, go to the superintendent. If you don't get that, go to the school board. Does that sound like an easy way to be transparent to you? Because really what this does is they want titles of things that have been used in the classroom, which, by the way, has been testified is already out there. There's an unwillingness to work with us to put those things on the website. What they've said is they're there, you go find them. We don't do that in the legislature. We don't say go search up where the bills are at. Transparency means you put it up where you can find it. And this isn't a huge burden. And I realize I'm kind of preaching to you, but I'm a little bit bitter. I've got thousands of my friends, and they are. I think our school system is fantastic. Our NAEP scores are going up. It's a great system. And I admire our teachers and what they do, unabashedly. Does that mean we shouldn't be transparent in the materials we're using? And I think they'll all find it helps them, because, you know, some of the quotes that came off of this is overburdening teachers, stifles creativity, and then took a shot directly at me. Disrespectful to our educators and assumes a lack of professionalism. That didn't come from my mouth, and it never will. I admire teachers. My daughter's a teacher. My brother-in-law is an administrator. I live in that world. My family has a long history of a lot of people that educate. And I really question when we've got an organization that represents all of those teachers, that doesn't represent the facts in their newsletters and their testimony. We expect more from lobbying organizations. I'm here for this bill, but it gets really hard to present a bill when they whip all of the educators in the state into a frenzy without facts of what the bill actually does. And what I just laid out was what this bill actually does. And it's actually not that much. Let's say that I taught, and this is, they're telling me you can't do this, all of this by 5. We all have sheet scanners, folks. It takes about 4 minutes to do 200 pages. That's all it takes to post it. It takes a picture of a title. We don't ask that the materials are explained in any way. Title and name, documents. If you're using a newspaper, you can reference the Casper Star Tribune, the Wall Street Journal, or whatever it is. This was not intended to be a huge burden. What it was intended to do is a tool for parents and people of interest to be able to see the materials that are in the classroom. And there's some great processes out there. The amendment's going to go into it that they vet huge amounts of those materials. And my guess is the testimony you're going to hear is correct. It won't be used a whole lot other than in cases that are egregious, and it presents a record there that what's been in the classroom. And it's there now. We've got Power School. We've got all kinds of different things. And what I've seen in this bill, Interest and I reached out and I said, help me define what materials are. Help me define what it takes. And I got nothing. It was an all-out assault of all or nothing. We can't do this. And I'm asking you to reach somewhere in between, which that amendment does it. It goes further than I think it should. I'm going to let it get presented. But really what we're boiled down to is teachers educate our kids, but they do it in conjunction with parents. And the way you become an engaged parent is to understand what your kids are being taught, how they're being taught, and then it brings you in. This doesn't solve all of it, but it will help some of them understand it. And I think it is a necessary part. The other part you'll see, and they've presented it, this is CRT bill. Pick it up and read, has nothing to do with it. In my opinion, the superintendent said different. I feel differently. This is a transparency bill. I want, as a parent and as a concerned person, I want the ability to be able to see what's there without having to go to the school or go dig. Is that too much to ask for transparency, that it's there? Because most of the materials are supposedly already there. So really boils down, and I ask you to look at yourselves as you vote. The parents have a right to know. Should we go through the effort it takes to make it where the parents know what the materials that are being presented are? No direction on how they're presented or what they are. They can be anywhere from Lord of the Flies to the other side of it. But is it your right to easily know what's being used in that classroom? Look inwardly and either vote yes or no. But it's a vote is, do you want the parents to know or don't you? Because that's really the bottom line of this. Like I said, I'm going to make one last time. I think it's really sad that this has been lobbied and we've whipped up the teachers with misinformation. Because the truth is, the ones we've answered, and I'm looking at Representative Nyman, I know he's answered a bunch of them, I have. When you actually tell them what the bill says, most of them aren't near as upset as it sounds. But when you start getting 300, 400, 500 emails, they're hard to answer. And by the way, I've got about an equal number from parents. It's pretty even on my end on the parents that care about it and the teachers that are upset, but almost none of the teachers understand what this bill does. And I think we need to do better in the future on how we lobby this. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Senators. Questions from the committee? Yes, go ahead, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Driscoll, Senator Scott, a couple of questions here, and it's your pleasure, Mr. Chairman. I think I got 2 or 3 if I can. We're asking teachers to present this after the following, or by the following school year, so they have it available to them. Can you explain to me what that's doing, why we're asking it for after the fact?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, yes. I felt like it was an undue burden to ask them ahead of time. Now, there's a provision in the bill that's a May version that the districts may require it, and that's after consultation with their teachers, they might want to do it live time. But as I presented earlier, it's a record of what was taught there. So if you get where you're going, you can look back and you can see what those materials are. And this isn't done to be confrontational. being done for transparency reasons so that you can see if your child comes home and, for example, they tell you, and kids aren't always straight up or they don't always explain great what's happening in a classroom. So you can go back and pull up his research to figure out where it's at. And I went to websites across the state, and the curriculums are all posted and they're good. You know, you have a topic like in the one I've used in the past is Holocaust. Great one, it needs taught. There's a full variance on the Holocaust, what happened and how it happened. Should both sides of that be taught? To me, the answer is absolutely. You need to have everything from it was the most atrocious thing ever happened to here's people that say it didn't happen. And what you do when you do that, as long as you can look at the materials and see both sides are there, you understand that they're making it where your kids are developing a thought process to make their own decisions on where it falls. And that's, in my opinion, as a parent, that's what I want my kids to have, is the ability to look at both sides and make a decision on their own, not propaganda from this side or this side, but they learn how to look at all sides of an issue and draw a conclusion that makes them make one of their own. That's what a good student is.
Follow up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I don't see in this is, I mean, we put this in Title 21 because it has to do with education. Catch title number 1 we need to fix. It's no longer a civics bill. This is an overarching district-wide educational classroom materials transparency bill. So I want to make that clear. But my question is what's the enforcement mechanism? If we have nothing in this bill that says, I mean, it says they shall, what's the enforcement mechanism that we're going to do if there's a teacher that forgets to get the information to district or something along those lines, it's found out about, and an uproar occurs? What do we do?
Go ahead, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, there is none. That was my testimony in committee. It was my testimony on the floor. It's not a hidden thing. This is trying to get to the right place without being burdensome. And if a teacher forgets material, doesn't get some up, timelines don't get met, it doesn't affect school funding, doesn't affect teacher evaluations, doesn't affect school board evaluations. It's a shot that says, look, we expect our school system to be transparent. And I do. And this is merely, guess what? See all these people back here? They have an interest in how we do that. And that's where I'm at, is there's a great interest in transparency. And that's what this is it's elevated. It's on people's radars now. And I think you're going to find, even if the bill does not pass, a whole lot of parents are going to go ask teachers what they're teaching because they're thinking about it.
Thank you.
We've accomplished part of it. Thank you.
Other follow-up? You okay?
Good right now.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. I think at this point in time, we'll have Representative Summers present his proposed amendment.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And so as I looked at this bill, I thought it was too much. You know, I think I do believe districts have an obligation to publish some of what they do, and I think they do. And I think that's is good transparency to the public and ultimately helps communities and local boards. But I wasn't comfortable with the scale of this bill. So what my amendment does is basically strikes everything in the bill until you get to page 4 to the duties of the boards of trustees. And then, Mr. Chairman, basically the board of trustees in each school district shall, and then in a new Romanette, no later than August 15th, 2022, and each school year thereafter, prominently publish on the school district's website the district-approved curricular resources utilized in instruction of the students in core classes and classes teaching civics for the preceding and upcoming school year. District-approved curricular resources includes instructional resources approved by the district for classroom instruction. Nothing in this paragraph shall prohibit school districts from periodically updating curricular resources. As the school year progresses, the curricular resources shall be available in the paper form for inspection by any person at reasonable times during regular business hours by the school district. Then it creates another Romanet, published policies regarding this selection and adoption of primary resources and procedures to review and challenge the appropriateness of instruction resources. And so, I worked with my districts to try to find language that was kind of what they do now, but maybe it allows the public to understand that that exists. And really what I'm trying to do is utilize the information that's already available by districts to publish, and also demonstrates, and I think most districts have a public review process if there's a complaint. So this would be just whatever that process is in each district. So that's what the bill would do now.
Questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the amendment to the point of, well, I guess what I'm trying to get to is this does put it back as a civics bill. So the statement that I made just a few minutes ago about this being outside of that, this at least does bring this back into civics directly. But my question is what does this do differently than we already require?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm not sure we require the publishing of anything. What I think it does is probably put in statute what is common practice in districts today.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I guess we'll open it to public comment, and we'll start probably if anyone from the State Department would like to comment on this. I see we have some present here. No, okay, all right. Just come forward, identify yourself, tell us who you represent.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Grady Hutcherson, second grade teacher for the past 24 years, and I now proudly serve as the president of the Wyoming Education Association. And I appreciate you taking time, and I appreciate the amendment before us because most importantly, the topic is what is important. I often testify and think about unintended consequences, so I want to clarify a couple of things. I'm educated, I'm licensed, I'm certified, I'm a professional educator. This bill, which has an unintended consequence of being demoralizing to me as an educator. That's where that talking point came from. It's an insult to me as a professional that I have to be micromanaged to this level. And the testimony that I provided in Senate Ed regarding this bill is that when you think about everything a teacher does in their classroom during the entire year, to then hear from people who aren't teachers about how it's not going to be work or take additional time to upload those materials is not accurate. So I just wanted to share that. We know that this national bill is supposed to be about transparency. My argument has been and is we wholeheartedly believe in transparency. We know the value of the parents' involvement in the education process. Parents could come into my classroom anytime they wanted. During open house, I would share the materials and the standards. So all of these things are already in place. And that's why the unintended consequence of this national transparency bill is more about political rhetoric than being respectful of professional educators. I want to share a couple of other things with you. I think it's been about a week and a half ago that the State Board of Ed and State Board of Career and Tech, CTE met. And they are doing some phenomenal work around education in the state of Wyoming that benefits students. And during that morning of the State Board CTE meeting, we heard a couple of presentations from Career Tech Ed educators. And there's a program in the state where the ag teacher received a grant and they're building barns and they're preg checking heifers and ewes. And then I think about how does that teacher give up that time with those students so that they can then have their district or themselves uploading materials. That's why it becomes an overburden, and it's not what's best for students, and it doesn't help the students' achievements. If a parent ever had a concern about what I was teaching in my classroom, they could visit with me about it, and if that concern continued, they could have a conversation with my principal. We have that evaluation cycle in place, right? My principal would know if they kept hearing from parents about concerns of what I was teaching in my classroom. So I just wanted to share those points and to clarify a couple of those comments in terms of the unintended consequences. And I do fear that this becomes that level of micromanagement that inadvertently undoes, for example, the really good work of the State Board of Education and the changes that they're trying to make. And so I will stop there, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions or clarification. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Chairman Paxton, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen. I'm the Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. I'm going to reiterate President Hutcherson's point. I really appreciate this amendment. I think that putting into statute what is in practice is potentially beneficial. It is a lot better than where we started at. I'm going to piggyback off of some of President Hutcherson's concerns of potential unintended consequences. So, in not having this amendment before me and not really being able to see it, I guess it raises some questions in terms of the language. So if districts determine what district adopted curriculum are we potentially creating an equity issue? We might have districts who don't have the administrative piece in place to put all that into play. We have others that might bring a wide gamut of materials into play. So it may potentially cause an equity issue. With that in mind, one of the things that I'd like for you to think about is in those districts who may require then, if they determine a broad list of what is district adopted curriculum, you need to start thinking about exponential multipliers, right? Let's just take a district that has 50 educators. For each of those educators, you need to add an exponential multiplier for a grade level. You now need to add an exponential multiplier for the subject area, even though to this point we're now back into this civics piece, right? But within that, then you need to add an exponential multiplier for all of the standards within that need to be met. And then another exponential multiplier for all of the materials that are needed to meet those standards. That's the potential, right, in some of those districts that have a broader array of district adopted curriculum. That would create an undue burden for our educators. One other thing I would like for you to think about. Last year, I believe it was, the bill that was Medicaid-based reimbursement for student-based services, there was a lot of discussion around where larger districts might be able to make that cost efficient because they'd be able to adopt that and make that beneficial with that billing piece. It was prohibitive for our smaller districts. And I think that we potentially run into the same problem with this bill, or at least with some of the mechanisms here, right? For some of those smaller districts who do not have those administrative pieces where they're able to, who uploads this, who maintains this? Are you saying that all teachers are going to upload the materials at the same time? Probably not. That's an ongoing piece. So we're going to have districts that does become now not just a burden on our educators, but potentially the administration in terms of implementation. So if we've got a problem with logistic implementation, potential problems for the workload for our educators, I think those are superseded by really the premise of this whole bill, right? The idea that we don't have transparency or there's a problem with transparency in the state of Wyoming. It is WA's belief that nothing could be further from the truth. We have multiple avenues in all of our schools, in all of our districts for transparency, whether that's the classroom management systems, whether that's to Grady's testimony, being able to come in and talk to your teacher, parent-teacher conferences, materials that go home, texts that go home, syllabus. We have multiple avenues for that transparency. That exists. So if we recognize that transparency isn't an issue, but we also recognize that this potentially presents an issue in terms of administrative logistic implementation and work for educators, it seems to me that it becomes hard pressed for us to pass a bill that does that. Might we hear about some anecdotal pieces where that is an issue? Yeah, I mean, we're human, right? Our systems are human, so they're going to be flawed. We are going to have issues. But those issues are the exception, not the rule in the state of Wyoming. And we don't legislate on anecdotal evidence, right? If we did, I got some bills I'd like to run by you guys, but we don't do that. I feel because of the transparency piece that is a non-issue, and because of this burden that could potentially happen, we don't need to pass this bill. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, just a statement, if I could.
Go ahead.
Both of you guys mentioned that just about, I believe were the words that were used by both of you, just about any time or place somebody can walk into a school and get what they're looking for. I'm going to push back on that, and I'm going to push back pretty hard because not only in my community, but clearly in Senator Driscoll's and Senator Scott's district, they are having issues with this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bringing this bill forward. And so I do know that we have anecdotal evidence of things that are occurring. And I do know that we have the vast, vast, vast majority of our teachers are willing to showcase anything and everything that they have. But we do have some situations that have risen to the point where it seems like school districts are not complying. They are pushing back, and they are pushing back to the point that parents are becoming frustrated and parents are becoming lost, that they're turning to legislators to ask what can be done so I can get this information. And so again, this is more of a statement than it is a question, but I recognize what you guys are saying is accurate in your minds. But I can also tell you I've been working on certain things within this school district here in Laramie County 1 for well over 6 months, and even I'm having a hard time getting information. So I appreciate your guys' point of view, but I also want to make sure that you guys understand that there is an opposing side of you that is just as frustrating from the other side. And parents are hearing it, and parents are coming to us just as much as they're coming, as teachers are coming for you guys. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming to testify. President Hutchinson, what is happening now with your curriculum? So you have your curriculum for your second graders, and then is that published anywhere? Is that on the website of your district, or how would a parent find out kind of what's going on in second grade?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Newsom, thank you for the question. Our district has current policy in place for the adoption of curriculum. So there are committees that are established at the district level that include stakeholder participation. I know the value of having parents engaged in the process, right? As a classroom teacher, the support I got from the parents made a world of difference, and I'll always be grateful for that. Parents can be on those committees where curriculum materials are reviewed so that their voice and concerns are being part of the process. So that exists in place. I don't know that, I apologize that I don't know specifically whether or not our district lists the district approved curriculum on the actual website or not. But I'll also tell you that it becomes more complex than that, because in my classroom, I have an entire wall filled with cupboards that have instructional resources in those cupboards. Even if the district had adopted a specific curriculum, I have to meet the needs of my students. So I might need enrichment materials. I might need remediation materials to help those that are struggling. And really that, I'm elaborating a little bit more than just the specific answer to your question, but I also have a classroom library. And as a teacher, that's where my mind starts almost shutting down in terms of how would I provide all of that information on an online format other than taking hours and hours and hours to do it when those processes do exist already at the district level? Thank you for the question.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. And I might mention that we want to be a little bit respectful of time here. We have a number of people that are online also. I want to take the people that are in here. And so we want everybody to have their say, but let's try to be as brief as we can, please. Okay, come forward, please. Identify yourself. Tell us who you represent.
My name is Mariah Learned. I am currently employed as a kindergarten through 8th grade reading and math interventionist at the University of Wyoming Lab School. I've also served as a Title I interventionist at Slade Elementary for the past 7 years. I'm here to urge you to vote no on Senate File 62. It is absolutely unnecessary. We already do and already have things in place that are represented in this bill. And I apologize, my testimony was prepared based on the original bill and not including any of the amendment information. As an interventionist, I never know what skill deficiencies my students will have from year to year, as no two students are the same. Their backgrounds are all different. They may have come from a different school, from a different district. They may have differences in literacy instruction, though that is a conversation for a different bill. Learning loss due to COVID and a host of other factors come into play in my role. We must be flexible and be able to adjust our instruction without having to worry about, which resource did I use just now? I'm gonna have to make sure I upload that later. Being able to adjust instruction, materials, and meeting the needs of our students is of high priority. My intervention groups and targets change frequently throughout the year based on the needs of students. No year of teaching intervention for me has ever been the same or even remotely close. Every minute I would spend compiling or listing materials would be precious time I would lose in planning and prepping for these interventions for our neediest students. It would be time lost that I could use for professional development. I participate in PD opportunities as often as I can, and I often find new materials as a result of those trainings. I would like to be able to, in a timely manner, implement those changes and that new knowledge in intervention. I seek out additional materials when tools in my toolbox do not address the needs of my students, and that does happen every single year. I'm currently participating in a 2-year literacy training through the WDE, thank you, that takes a minimum of 30 to 40 hours outside of my work per semester. I'm also a part of 2 other year-long professional development courses that I've paid for by myself, and I've carved out even more precious time outside of work to complete those, along with many other webinars, 8 since January 1st. I'm not alone in this work of continuing education as an educator. This bill will ensure that my colleagues and I all have less time for such professional development. Nothing has been proposed to come off our plates as a result of this potential new requirement. Something will have to give. These platters are overflowing. My students deserve the best of me, not what's left of me after creating a list. There are literally thousands of materials I could pull from to plan and provide quality intervention to students next year. Please allow me to do what I'm trained to do, and that's to teach my students. Testimony was previously given that schools rejected parents from visiting classrooms. The fact that COVID precautions were the reason for limiting parents in classrooms was carefully left out of that testimony. As COVID moves from pandemic to endemic, we will see volunteers and observers coming back into our classrooms as we did before, especially in the elementary setting. For secondary settings, learning management systems have provided a truly transparent and efficient way for parents to be involved with every aspect of their students' school day throughout the pandemic. Learning activities and materials for the day are posted within the learning management system for parents to actually meaningfully engage in. A list of potential resources would not accomplish this, as there is no context and no engagement. And that's truly the goal for educators with parent involvement. It will become it will be a welcome shift to have parents back in our classrooms in a way that truly engages them in the learning that is taking place. Teachers are all for transparency and parental involvement. We know it's valuable. This bill, however, does not accomplish that in any way, shape, or form. Posting a list of potential materials does not create or equate to parental involvement or engagement. This bill is micromanagement of teachers. It is unnecessary. Policy already exists requiring curriculum and materials to be available for stakeholders to see and engage with prior to boards of trustees adopting them. Policy exists for instances where parents or other stakeholders wish to communicate about those materials or other issues, and policy creates a clear pathway and chain of command for that communication. Finally, as a parent, I do not want the professionals in schools who teach my children to waste their time listing potential resources. I would much rather that they spend that time prepping and planning, engaging, and high-quality instruction. I know I can reach out to any of them at any time with questions or concerns, and there have been times where I've had to do that. And there have been times that I've had to go maybe one more step up that rung. I also know these people are humans with lives outside of teaching. They're even more tired and taxed as a result of this pandemic. The need to go home and be with their families instead of complying with this bill is great. Again, this bill does not create engagement, and it could be the tipping point for many educators who are already contemplating leaving the profession in this state. It is my belief that a person cannot support this bill and truly support or respect educators as the professionals that we are. I promise you, each of you, that the only agenda I have in teaching children how to read is to teach them how to read. Governor Gordon proclaimed that March is Take Your Elected Official to School Month. I would invite any and all of you to join me in my classroom to see what we're doing. I always strive for transparency as an educator, as do my colleagues. Thank you for your time. I would stand for any questions.
Okay, questions from the committee? Comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
On the secondary learning management systems, like Canvas is used in the state, and I think most folks that don't have kids in high school are involved. I mean, can you just kind of educate the committee a little bit, and so I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a new world for me. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
ahead.
Representative Harshman, thank you. My children started middle school in the middle of this pandemic. I had no idea what a learning management system was. And then I got thrown into it as an educator last year too. Steep learning curve, but as a parent, it's really simple. There's a QR code. I take a picture of it with my phone, and immediately I am able to see every single thing that my children see in their Canvas course for every day. That engagement and that transparency, or excuse me, the transparency is there. The engagement is up to me as a parent. Am I engaged? Yes. I know what my children are working on in math. I know what they're working on in English. I know because I take the time, and it's easy on my phone, literally take a picture of that QR code, and I have access to see everything that my two children are doing. I can see the text that they're reading in English.
So, Mr. Chairman, just follow up. So many of my colleagues like tape record their own lectures. All those things are on there. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. I uploaded hundreds of those videos last year as a CBVI teacher.
So, and this, is it your experience? I mean, so a teacher has full access, basically like the student in the classroom, to all that. And then what about like when your child or a student, when you spell out an assignment spelled out on one of these systems, and you put in the grade for that assignment? I mean, how soon does that go to the parent?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Representative Harshman, it is instantaneous. As soon as I click submit, that's there. There's feedback. I can provide written feedback. I can provide voice or video feedback, all of which I've done, all of which my children have received.
So the parent phone buzzes
Yes.
when you, yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your testimony, ma'am. I appreciate all the information that you gave us. And I, too, have had quite a few conversations with educators and with parents. I also come to find out that not every district uses Canvas. And so that's a local control issue that they do take the opportunity to or not to offer that opportunity to parents. I'm just asking for an opinion from you, ma'am, if you don't mind. I've received a lot of feedback from both sides. What, in your opinion, is creating this? I mean, I've got parents that really like the idea of this transparency, this ability to be able to see anything that their children are exposed to during the day in their school. And I've got educators that are very frustrated with the potential of having to do these extra duties. What do you see in this needs to be corrected? Because there's obviously two schools of thought here. Just looking for your thoughts on this. What should parents be able to have access to as far as from your perspective, or is there anything that they should not be able to have ready access to? And why is there that gulf right now? Is it a communication issue? I'm just curious. What is your thought on that, please?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Representative, I would say that I I think this is, like you've heard, a national bill, but I also understand that parents want to know what's going on in classrooms. And yes, we should absolutely, as parents, know what is happening in our classrooms. And if there's an equity issue in the learning management systems and not every district having that available to them, I understand that that could be a point of frustration and an opportunity for districts to potentially move forward in a way that can engage parents. What I think you will find is that parents will not be satisfied with this list. It doesn't actually get to the root of the issue, which is wanting to know what's happening in that classroom. A list of materials is not going to tell you what I do in a 45-minute intervention period with a student. A conversation with me would. Coming into my classroom absolutely would. I think that those open lines of communication are so important, and unfortunately, I do think that just that's one of those byproducts of education during COVID. I absolutely do. Maybe that wasn't available, but I think that we'll be back here again next year with testimony that this list didn't do what you thought it was going to do, because it doesn't promote engagement. It's a tracking mechanism, and that gives me absolutely no information about what's going on in my student's classroom. A newsletter from a middle school math teacher is far more informative for me as a parent than a list of everything that they might see in 8th grade algebra.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Follow up or? Okay, Representative Obermiller, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple times in the testimony today, we've heard the term national bill used. Can you inform us as to who is behind this on a national level, please?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I will say I am not aware of who put this out on a national level. What I understand is from previous testimony in Senate Ed that there are other states that have entertained such legislation, and we heard from other stakeholders that have said, we've seen it in this state and this state. And I apologize, I can't name those. I'd have to go back and watch that Senate Ed testimony. So that's where I would get that from.
Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, kind of follow up on that. I'm trying to track this. Is this the bill that was introduced by the sponsor and the president and the former superintendent that left to Virginia? Is this the bill last summer? I don't know.
Representative?
I'm seeing
sorry,
heads.
Chairman.
Okay, I see the sponsor. Okay,
Okay, I was gonna
I'm
say yes, I
tracking.
believe so.
Okay.
All right, anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I might mention also that you might feel free to comment on the proposed amendment that we have here too. I know we're sort of ignoring that, so whoever gets up here first is fine. Okay.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, my name is Kimberly Amon, and I am an award-winning National Geographic certified educator here in Cheyenne. I teach 3rd grade at Pioneer Park. I've been in education for 29 years, all of them in Wyoming. And I have always been extremely proud of our education system in this state. I know that you've heard testimony on why this bill is not necessary, so I'm going to skip all the things that we already do, and I'm going to try and paint a picture for you of what our life is currently like in the classroom. Because I don't think that you can pass legislation without really understanding where educators are at this point. And so last week, my partner teachers, one's a first-year teacher, very good at her job. One is a veteran teacher, and both of them told me that they would consider leaving the profession if this bill was passed. Last night, one of my best friends, who's a 1st grade teacher here in Cheyenne, called me and said she was considering going to law enforcement as a second career and working with victims assistance. And I'll repeat that, law enforcement and victims assistance, because it would be less stressful than teaching 1st graders right now in our district. That's why I'm here. And I took a personal leave this afternoon so that I could come here because I feel like it's that important that you hear from us. We do not have time to currently do everything that's being asked of us. There are simply not enough hours in the day. It's math, really. After March of 2020, we were asked to double our workload to meet the needs of students. And we did, because that's what teachers do. We step up and we meet the needs of our kids. We had to completely rethink every single process we had in the classroom to keep our students safe. We are currently required to teach both in person and online when students are quarantined, which means we have to prepare both in-person lesson plans and online lesson plans for our students. We were asked to make all of these changes without 1 extra minute of planning time given to us or 1 dime of compensation for the extra work. And we did that because, again, that's what teachers do. We are really here for the students. Sadly, and all we really want from that is to be respected and valued. And if you ask educators, they will tell you that that's what they want. And sadly, all we've received is more attacks from people who have not visited schools. They have not came and talked to us. And instead, they listen to the rhetoric that's on the national news that is intended for no other purpose than to instill fear and distrust in our public education system. That is what is frustrating to us. I'm going to skip the part about it's not necessary because you've heard all that testimony of all the things we're already doing and the fact that we are transparent. We do not ask doctors to post treatment plans before they diagnose a patient and then track their progress as they treat that patient and upload everything so we can make sure they're doing a great job. We do not ask attorneys to post briefs before they meet their clients or to track all of their work that they do so that we can be transparent. I do not even have time to grade the writing assignments that are sitting in my classroom right now because of all the work that I'm supposed to be doing. And so I cannot really wrap my head around how I would have time to catalog all the materials that I would use and possibly at this point in time, and it's not due until July of next year, but I have to make a list of that because I don't want to forget that, and that's tedious and time consuming. Teaching is not babysitting. It is both a science and it is an art. We do not use the same materials each year because we meet the needs of our students as they come up with the students that we have. We are constantly adapting to make sure that students get what they need. We are professionals. We have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctorate degrees. And we deserve to be treated as the professionals that we are. This bill does the opposite of that. It is demoralizing. It is disrespectful and not necessary. And the only thing this bill will accomplish is to drive more teachers out of this profession. We educators really, really missed that 1 week in March of 2020 where people thought we were valuable and they respected us and they were thanking us for being good contributors to our society. We missed that. We'd like to go back. I am begging you to please give us the professional respect that we deserve and trust us to do the jobs that we've devoted our entire lives to. Please vote no on Senate File 62. And in regards to the amendment is far better, thank you, Representative Summers, than the original bill. So I will stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you this question. With that amendment, how much of a burden would it put on you? What kind of a burden would it put on you with the amendment?
I think that it sets us up for a potential burden because, like Mr. Mullen said, if we have districts who decide, it's about that local control, right? It opens doors to say, oh, well, this district has to post X, Y, and Z, and this district, we're okay with this being posted. So I think it's an equity issue across our state. And I really just don't think it's necessary because you've heard all the transparency things that are happening right now. I do think it's a communication issue. I'm not sure why, if a parent comes in my classroom, we would have great conversations, and they do come in my classrooms.
Well, we hear from a lot of parents that it is necessary, so I think that's the reason the bill is here. Questions are from the committee? Ocean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, sorry, I apologize. I do not remember your name. Could you state it again?
It's Kimberly Amon.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Amon. I am asking this because I've heard it on a couple different testimonies now, but is it generally understood that you'd be posting materials for the year preceding this date and not ahead of time?
I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman and Representative, I think that it is understood that we would be posting it for the whole year. The change and moving the deadline to when we would post that doesn't change the amount of work because we still have to track it. And I think painting a picture for what we actually do day to day in a classroom is important, because it's not the same every single day. And if a student needs help in multiplication, I'm grabbing this resource and this resource. So I think depending on the students, it's different all the time, could be different from day to day, could be different based on what standards you're teaching.
Okay, follow up?
Mr. Chairman, would it be less of an issue? I mean, there's a lot of discussion about things that you grab from here and there to help kids. I mean, if we were more specific about you were posting the main material that you were teaching rather than all the supplemental things you use to aid that teaching. I mean, if we were more specific about that, would this be a more palatable bill?
Go ahead.
Chairman Paxton and Representative Andrew, I believe that the amendment that Representative Summers submitted would definitely be more palatable, and that is to list our district-approved curriculum on the website. I feel like in most districts, well, I know in my district it is posted, and the standards are available, and there's time for people to comment on this, public comment on the standards and on the curriculum, and parents are asked to participate in curriculum committees and school committees, the collaborative decision-making teams in our schools, and we have parent-teacher conferences, and we have parent nights, and all of those things. So there seems to, from my perspective, at least in my district, those things are already being done. And so, like Representative Summers said, it would be bringing our legislation in line with what's already being done.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What percentage of your studies or what you present to the kids each day is beside the curriculum? I mean, you have your curriculum established, but I mean, extra pieces of information that you present to the kids. Is there a way of giving me an idea of a guess of what percent of your curriculum in the course of a day is outside of the standard curriculum that is being presented or is on sites?
I teach gifted and talented students, and so quite a bit of mine is actually outside of that curriculum. That said, I have a plan for the year with topics and themes and things like that we're going to be discussing that all my parents get at the beginning of the year. And so they do have access to that. I think here's an example of we're talking about immigration, and that is a district-approved curriculum that I'm following, that we're teaching about the reasons why people immigrate to America. And so right now, talking about what's going on in Ukraine is really important. And so that would be an example of something that I would not have planned for, but I would be using current events to supplement and talk about, here's what refugees look like. This is real time. This is immigration in process right now. These are some of the reasons why people have to leave their homes.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's kind of some of the information, the feedback I've gotten is there was some educators that had contacted me and said that they couldn't use current events based on that legislation. But as I read the bill, it doesn't negate or limit you on what you can use or any current events or anything like that. It just is asking you to, if you use some of these different things, just to cite where they came from and post them. It's not controlling or containing or requiring you to give prior notice or anything like that on anything that you're educating with. It's just, you can use whatever you like, however you want to present it, just provide the opportunity for parents to be able to see what the source was and then let them make their own decision. Is that your understanding? Or, because I know I got a lot of folks that said that you're requiring that I tell you everything I'm going to teach a year in advance. And I know that the legislation does not say that. It's just that we're just wanting you to give us examples and information in regards to what you have taught. Is that your understanding of that?
Chairman Paxton, Representative, I think that is my understanding of that. However, I would tell you that tracking that, along with tracking my students' scores and tracking their intervention schedules and tracking the amount of time and minutes that I put in to make sure that they learn this fact and that fact, is a burden. No matter when I have to post it. If I have to track every single thing I do throughout the day, I am not going to be as an effective teacher as I am right now. because I will be worried about making sure that I record, oh, I used this today. Oh, I used that today. And to me, that is a complete waste of time when I should be putting my time into direct one-on-one instruction with my students.
Representative Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, one more follow-up question. So if you do use something like a news article that has to do with an event today, I mean, I assume you're probably getting that in a digital format and you're using your computer to print it out. I mean, would you catalog that as something you've used, or do you just delete it afterwards and kind of forget about it?
Go ahead.
Chairman Paxton, I do catalog most of those to use, the next time that they would come up. I'm a National Geographic certified educator, so a lot of my resources come from National Geographic, and I get newsletters. And so, again, back to the Ukraine incident, I get those things, and I would print those out and I would put them in my file.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We're going to be forced to limit our time on this because we have so many people to go. We're going to limit you to 2 minutes. And Mr. Vice Chairman Brown will keep track of the time. And so as you're sitting back there, try to gather your thoughts in a more condensed form so that we can move through this and give everyone an opportunity to do this. I heard this thing one time about a guy who said, "I'm sorry for writing such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." And that's kind of what we want you to do, is write a short one, if you would, please. Okay, go ahead. Identify yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Mr. Chairman, committee, it's good to be with you. My name is Nathan Winters, president of the Family Policy Alliance of Wyoming, and it's good to be with you today. I just want to briefly touch on the fact that I recognize that we're in a very difficult situation where families have in some ways been pitted against parents. And I don't know if, families have been pitted against the school district in some ways. And no parent that I know of wants to be found in that position. And yet it has come to our attention over the last couple of years that there are certain issues that are being taught in our educational system that brings concern to families. In our own state, we have found, at least in the Gillette public school system, it looks like that there are certain materials that are being taught to our children. I have it right here, that would teach them that they are racist based upon the amount of melanin in their skin. That is something that when it's taught to a child, it brings great concern to the parent, obviously. And so when we look at the situation before us, families just believe that educators should not come between the parent and the child. And what's at stake here is not the curriculum as a whole. We know that is posted. It's oftentimes the supplemental material. And all we're asking for is that material be posted after the fact. And whether you use Canvas or Populi or Blackboard or different LMS systems, there is a way where we can make sure that there is transparency in academics. There are many good teachers, many wonderful teachers. Usually it's a rare situation. Many times it's only found out well after the fact that their children have been taught something that would be damaging to them. And so parents really are concerned with, could we please see what our children are being taught, not only in their overall curriculum, but just in the supplemental materials. And that's the origin of this bill, and that's why I ask you to pass it.
I do. My name is Alicia Green, and I'm with Honoring Wyoming Children. I'm a mom of 2 very different kids. I have one that actually tested for the gifted and talented program that the last teacher spoke at, and another one that would probably go more in the reading specialist needed category. I really feel like teachers are caught in this crossfire. Hearing one person say that a person couldn't be for this bill and for teachers just broke my heart, because I'm for teachers and I'm also for this bill. Going into the school year, I had a problem with one of the mandates, and I went to a school board to kind of voice my opinion on it, and I heard about this new curriculum. This was the Monday before school started, so 7 days before school is supposed to start. I go into my kids' school and I say, hey, what's this about this new curriculum? They really had no idea either. They didn't tell me. I don't think this is something that should be blamed on teachers. And I'm strongly not placing blame there, but I also couldn't get information. And here I am 5 days before school starting, and I'm scrounging, figuring out what is this curriculum actually teaching? Is there underlying things behind it besides just teaching ELA type subjects? And I ultimately pulled my kids from public school and put them in a different school. That school that my kids now go to, I'm in there at least 2 days a week. This week, I've already been there this morning helping. I'll be there 5 days this week, helping out with certain projects and a fundraiser that they're doing. So to say that people that are for this bill aren't for teachers just really is a hurtful generalization that I don't want to be put into. It is hard, like Representative Brown said, it is hard to find this information. It is hard to know what books are being taught and what the information in those books are. And a lot of teachers, they pull some of the controversial books, and if that list was posted online, I'd be like, okay, cool, this teacher's not actually teaching this book. I don't need to worry about it. Or if I saw that these books, okay.
Okay. Questions from the committee?
Just one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned that you're taking time out of your day to go into this new school that your students are in. How much time did you take out of your time to go into the public school system?
So that's also a hard, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry about that. Quite a bit, actually. We lived in a different town, and in that town was where I lived for a long time. So I had help with my younger child, someone to watch him while I went into the schools, and helped a lot. When we moved here, I didn't have that. So until he was in school, I wasn't able to do that because I had no one to watch him. And then last year I wasn't allowed to. That was the first year I had both kids in, but I had offered and I did different things. I don't want to sound boastful, but I had blessed my daughter's whole class with KiwiCo kits. I don't know if you know what they are, but it's a STEM kit where they got to take it home for Christmas, because I used to always help with Christmas parties and things like that. So if you're asking if I've always been involved in the school, yes, very much so.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else? We're going to have to shut this off in about 10 minutes and go to the online folks because they've been waiting patiently there too. So be quick and be fast, please.
Guys, I think fill these seats so you're ready to go.
Come in and get comfy.
Yeah, yeah,
Then we don't have to take time.
yeah, that'd be great. Okay, you can be first.
Chairman Paxton, thank you, committee. Thank you for the hard work that you do every day. I've been an educator for 11 years. Currently, I teach second grade. My name is Heather Rutz, sorry. And I currently teach second grade in Torrington, Wyoming. And I've taught second grade through 6th grade. And every year, each year I teach is significantly different. Significantly different in the fact that each year we are expected to do more and more and more. And then differently in the fact that each year my students are different. So if I were to post my resources that I did last year, it wouldn't matter for the next year. I could post the district resources that our district has right now that are currently sitting on my shelf. And so I don't think that this bill is going to get the transparency that we need with parents. 4 times a week, I get an hour to lesson plan. That's reading, writing, math, Orton Gillingham, intervention, enrichment, and much more. So I also have meetings during those 4 hours to prepare all that material that I need to. I'm also contacting parents throughout the 4 hours that I have. My students right now, their skills range from pre-kinder to about 4th grade. So I'm trying to differentiate. So all the materials that I would use is a gamut. And so it would be cumbersome to put all those resources into some kind of file to upload for parents. Teacher burnout is already an issue. Teachers are quitting left and right, and we're not replacing them fast enough. I have 16 students right now, and I have about 3 active parents. I would love for more, but that's just reality.
Time, sorry. Questions from the committee? All right, who's next? Go ahead.
My name is Dane Weaver. I'm the 712 Social Studies teacher from Tinsley, Wyoming. I'm also the 2020 Wyoming Teacher of the Year. Chairman Paxton, thank you so much, committee. Thank you so much for listening to us all. I have a little bit of a different perspective. Coming from Tinsley, we are, of course, a small school. And our classes look quite a bit different than the rest of the state. I teach 6 different classes a day. That's not 6 classes. That's 6 different classes a day. That's a lot. I do the same amount of lesson plans in 1 week that most people will do in a whole semester. It's quite a bit. But the key here is I also live way beyond the textbook. I always have. I'm a social studies teacher. Today, my kids are going through accounts of the Battle of Guadalcanal. You're not going to find, but in a textbook, maybe like one little line about Guadalcanal and then you move on, which is a tragedy. And so today I've organized a series of lessons where kids are reading 4 different accounts of 4 different veterans who came from Guadalcanal. Now that did not come from one resource. That came from a couple different things that I had to pull together. So there's 4 resources that I would need to list up on my sheet right there. And I do this all the time because we know that our kids need an authentic education. We need to go far beyond what, I experienced as a kid. I had a teacher that had a textbook. We read pages 369 through 375, answered questions 1 through 3, and then I learned absolutely nothing. And that was not really what I deserved. I thought I needed a little bit more. So when I became an educator, I wanted to take my experience for my students and go so much further. By doing this, I have to pull a lot of resources. So if you'll think about this, I use a minimum of about 2 resources per class. I teach 6 classes. That's 12 resources a week. I teach 175 days a year. That is 2,100 resources. That's what I would post, 2,100 resources. Now, if you want to talk about transparency, if you're a parent and you want to look at my resources, would 2,100 resources give you any transparency whatsoever? Oh, goodness, no.
Sorry. Questions from the committee? Yes, go ahead, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even though there's that many resources, you would have to agree that parents should have the opportunity to be able to see those resources and have the opportunity to question those resources at their leisure, because that's what I'm hearing is, and I understand there's a breakdown in the communication. I'm starting to see that more readily all the time. But at the risk of folks' hair bursting into flames in this room, teachers work for the parents. The parents provide the students, and they're responsible for those students. So I would suggest that I wish more parents were involved. I served on school boards. I've got kids, got grandkids coming up. I wish we could get more parents involved. But I think we need to be a little cautious about saying, that's just more information than any parent would want to have to sift through. They may not. But the reality of it is, as a parent, we should have the opportunity, I think, to sift through that information if we so choose. And so that's my question. Should it be daunting? Should we be looking at this from the standpoint, well, this is just too much work for our parents to have to worry about, or our teachers should have to surmount? Because ultimately, we're working for these kids, and we're trying to get these parents involved and make sure that they know what's going on, because they're responsible ultimately. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your question. And without a doubt, parents are our primary stakeholders. We work for our parents. Especially in a small community, because they're not just parents, they're my neighbors, they're my friends. I know them. And when parents have questions, they come to me, they ask, and I let them know. I talk to them about the curriculum. We have times in our school where we sit there and parents come in. We have parent-teacher meetings. We have all this. If parents want any materials I have, they're posted right there on Google Classroom for their perusal. And I'll be glad to give them anything they want. I do not want to hide anything from parents. Listen, transparency is important, without a doubt, because I need the parents to trust me as a teacher, or else my kids are not going to learn. But I think that posting all this material on that list that we would all have to put together is a tedious task that doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't get us closer to where we want, because the vast majority of parents are not going to look through all that, especially when that's just one class. If you have English and math and science and they have to look through all these documents, they're going to be lost in the weeds.
Okay. Representative Overmiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talk to us briefly about the chilling effect of posting everything you taught all day and knowing that you're just getting a target on your back from certain circles as to what sources you're drawing on. That's one part of my question. The other one is, talk to us about your role as a gatekeeper of the truth, so that so this idea of giving as much weight to Holocaust deniers as the Holocaust itself, that somehow you're obligated to run the gamut of thought out there and your role as a truth keeper. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Representative. First off, to your first point, I thought about this morning. I teach a class called 20th Century History. Obviously, the 20th century was plagued by communism. And so my kids need to know what communism is. We need them to know. And so they do look at Karl Marx. And so it's not something that I'm obviously endorsing, but they need to be familiar with the idea or they won't understand the Soviet Union. If I put on their Karl Marx, Das Kapital, oh boy, without context, that is dangerous. And I'm not promoting it, but my students need to understand that theory that led to so much genocide in the 20th century. It's important. And there's so much context that has to be there. And that's a danger, and that's a very good observation. The second one, as far as the gatekeeper of the truth, I'm a fact presenter. These are the facts that we have from history, and that's what it is. I don't believe in giving too much interpretation. Interpretation leads to bias, and that's troubling. I want to give facts. I want to give the narrative, but I don't want to, sit there and say, well, there are some people who believe in flat Earth. I don't want to do that. I present facts as we know them.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you.
We're running out of time, folks.
Rachel Gibson, third grade teacher, Lingle, Fort Laramie, in Goshen County. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I want to give you a little bit different perspective. I would like you to imagine reaching into a bag of M&Ms and pulling out a handful, and that representing a classroom full of students. Now imagine reaching in and grabbing another handful, and this representing a group of students next year. Each time you reach in, you will get a completely different handful, no matter what you do. This is the reality of a teacher. Whether you teach elementary, middle school, or high school students, general or special education, elective, or college prep. My last year's class, compared to the 21 amazing and unique students this year, is so drastically different that I am not able to use even half of the resources that I have used the previous 2 years. Not only are their academic and social emotional needs as incomparable as a fistful of M&Ms, but their background knowledge can be just as hindersome to the mastering of a skill. There are days that I feel like a brand new teacher to third grade, searching for resources to teach a concept or a skill because either last year's resource is at too high of a skill level, or because they don't have the background knowledge to support the understanding of the vocabulary, and I need to find something else that will help them to be more successful. A good teacher capitalizes on a student's strengths and helps them to progress through the weaknesses by teaching the critical life skills of flexibility and adaptability. Educators must have the opportunity to adjust the curriculum resources to ensure that district and state testing standards and timelines are met. Transparency within the curriculum already exists. We don't need a bill to dictate a conversation that should be already taking place. You've heard that it's not that much to upload a list of resources, but do you know how many resources an average teacher uses in a week? Now I'm going to take off my teacher hat and put on my parent hat. I am also invested.
Sorry.
Okay, you're good.
All right. Are you next, young man? Does he want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Chayton. I am 10 years old, and I am in 4th grade at Indian Paintbrush Elementary School. I don't think Senate File 62 is a good bill. Good teachers use lots of different types of materials every day to teach us, and sometimes they look things up because we ask a lot of questions. One time we were learning about space, and one of my classmates asked about a star, and they wanted to know how far away it was. My teacher looked up the answer while we were at recess so he could tell us the answer. My teacher does that a lot. We have a lot of questions, but those things were not in the lesson plans for the day. It is really cool that my teacher is able to look up all look up answers to things we are interested in. It means we are learning even more. If this bill passed, I think that teachers would not do as much because it would be more things that they have to keep track of and put on their list. I don't think it's a good idea. When my teachers let us ask all kinds of questions and help us find the answers, that makes school more interesting. We learn a lot more when our teachers can look up information and find new things to share with us. I also think the bill is a lot of work for teachers. They already work really hard, and I don't think this is fair. The bill might even make good teachers quit. Plus, it is probably more work for principals too. Who is going to review all those lists? Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I am asking you to vote no on Senate File 62. And also I want to say thank you to all my teachers who work so hard, and thank you to everyone here who is standing up for teachers.
And you still had 10 seconds left. You're doing way better than the adults. Okay, anyone on the committee have a question for this young man? Okay, thank you for your presentation. Good job. Yes, go ahead.
How old are you?
10.
10. Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's
In about 11 years, you can come take over one of these jobs here. Okay? Okay, who's next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Carrie Murphy. Besides being a very proud mom, I'm an education policy researcher of over 15 years, specializing in the teacher pipeline and the teacher workforce. Had a lot of data I was going to share, but for the sake of brevity, I just wanted to paint a quick picture of the state of the teacher pipeline and teaching workforce in Wyoming. We know that we're already facing teacher shortages. We know that the number of program completers coming out of the University of Wyoming's teacher preparation program has decreased 27% since 2012. So the young adults interested in teaching, that number is going down. And we're having a more difficult time being competitive with neighboring states because we have let our teacher salaries stagnate. That's painting a pretty bleak forecast for the future of Wyoming education. We need to be doing more to show teachers that they are valued in Wyoming. We need to be doing more to support Wyoming teachers, to retain the incredible, highly trained professionals we have in our Wyoming schools right now. We need to be doing more to make Wyoming schools a place where teachers want to come teach. Instead, even if it is not the intent, Senate File 62 sends the message to teachers that we don't trust them. Even with the amendment, which is absolutely better than the original bill, this bill is a tone-deaf nod at transparency that completely ignores reality. I want to say that the best type of education policy that is effective and well-received is written in consultation with teachers. And I want to speak briefly as a parent as well. I'm a parent of 2 school-age kids, and I can tell you that this bill is unnecessary. There is not a documented problem that this legislation is trying to solve. It is a solution in search of a problem. I know what my kids are learning. I get weekly newsletters from my kids' teachers that detail what they're learning each week.
Sorry. Before we go on, is there anyone that's traveled a great distance to come in here and testify that are in the room? We got time for one more, and then we need to go. Have you traveled a great distance to get here? Okay, please come forward. We'll let both of you guys go, and then we better shut it off right there. Okay? Who wants to be first? You were here first, so go ahead. Be a quick 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, representatives, my name is Heather Smith. I'm a mom of 3 kids and I live here. I want to share my experience this past year. I took my daughters in to meet their teachers this year before they started school, and I asked the teachers, hey, can I see what curriculum you guys are going to teach my kids? The first 3rd grade teacher, she is brand new and she didn't know too much about the wit and wisdom. She tried to show me as much as possible. The 1st grade teacher, who has been teaching at this school for a very long time, and I also volunteered at this school for 5 years, wouldn't even speak to me. She said, go see the principal. And I said, I just want to see the 1st grade books this year. No, go see the principal. I went to see the principal who know me very well. He could not come up with any of the books to show me for 1st grade. He said, well, do you know of the books you're talking about? And I know that they had just gotten this new curriculum a week before school had started. So nobody knew anything about this curriculum. So I pulled my girls from public school. My son still goes to Meadowlark. His teacher has been very great and transparent with me, has worked to show us what books there are. But there are a lot of concerns going on. There's not only with the curriculum this year that nobody knows anything about, there's also with surveys this year. My son got in the car and told me, hey, the anti-bullying survey was different this year. It had different questions on it. So I called the school and they told me to go to the admin building, and I picked up the test from them, and it was like dated 2007. I took it to him and his friends, and they looked at it and they said, nope, this is not the same survey. We go to the school board does not listen to us. The superintendent ignores us. It has been a very difficult year. We can't get any of the information we want to. We're fighting this battle, and it's not against the teachers by any means at all. The teachers have been great, most of them, but 10 teachers coming and testifying how great they are doesn't hold the whole district accountable for what's going on. And I don't know if you've been following the stuff that's been going on at the school board, but we have had a very difficult time. There was a 7th grade honors class that handed out a book from the Wit and Wisdom. It had very age inappropriate material in it. The kids read it. They brought it home to the parents.
Sorry, I know you're in the middle of a thought. It's pretty tough. All right. Go ahead, identify yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Chairman Paxton, committee members, my name is Kristen Ledoux. I'm a trustee on the Johnson County School District Number 1 board. I want to beat that 2 minutes, so I'm going to be swift. Transparency is vital. I'm so glad that people are expecting it and demanding it. However, I feel transparency in education is completely different than general government. It's all about relationships. It's about the kids. It's about their parents that entrust us with their children all day. And this bill would drive them further from the schools and further from those relationships. A website is great. It's great to check your kids' lunch balance, but if you really want to know things, that's why there's the chain of visiting with the teacher and the administration so that you can go in, have those conversations. We can't get everything on a website. The real meat of it is in the school, and that's where we need our kids and where we need our parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Chairman Paxton and members of the committee, Charles Oski, Superintendent, Johnson County School District Number 1. So I'm just going to summarize. It's hard to follow a 10-year-old after what he said in a series of events, but it's a trust in the process. What the districts are doing or not doing. We're coming out of COVID. We locked down our doors. We weren't in person with our parents. We weren't communicating, and that door is starting to open. So as a superintendent, we're opening the door to parents coming back in schools, being involved in Title I and parent meetings and discussing what's happening in the different tiers. We're revisiting our policy on parent volunteers so that we can get more parents in the classrooms so that they know what's going. So I think districts around the state are moving in that direction. I just want to remind everybody, we're coming out of a pandemic where we locked down our doors. We tried to ask our teachers to teach virtually, and a whole nother lesson in learning and professional development took place. Our greatest resource is our kids, but that greatest resource that helps those kids is our teachers. And the one thing we don't have a lot of is time. But districts and administrators and teachers are wanting to do what's best for kids, but that critical thing of asking more time when there's already a lot of stress, there's already a lot of things happening within their classrooms, even with the K-3 literacy. And when we talk about what we're doing there, there's a lot of professional development that still has to take place. And how we bring that to the table, that is our challenges as district leadership and as board of trustees. But I want to reiterate, we want the best for kids, but guarding that sacred time is a critical factor, and getting processes in place so that the parents and the community can trust what we're doing as a district. I think that's the goal of every district. And to answer, Representative Summers had a question, or somebody asked him a question. It is a part of accountability. So as districts, we roll into accountability in 2024. So making sure our curriculum is on our websites and our resources that are available to kids, that's something that any district is going through. So
sorry.
Thanks.
Okay, question?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So Charles, does my amendment create an undue burden for districts?
I appreciate your amendment, and it really does align to what we're trying to do with accreditation already. So I think it's something that just already hopefully will parallel what we're already doing. So I don't know why we need the bill, but your amendment does align more to that. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you for your testimony. I think we better go online now.
It can't take many because we got third reading next.
We can't be late. We've got to be back at 2:00. So we're going to have to be swift on this also. And probably, what do we think? About 10 minutes or so to be able to work the bill?
I did one more or two.
Well, we've got Shad Hamilton, this Wyoming's secondary school principals. Okay. Can you hear us? Shad, are you on?
Hi.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
And I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. House Ed Committee, thank you for allowing my testimony. I sent you a big old long email last Friday that has more details in it than I'll speak to. The only thing that I'd like to share with you is I do represent about 160 secondary school principals from across the state of Wyoming, which is most of them. And a couple things, we do believe the process for transparency is there already, like some of the other testimony got to. But second of all, there is a process, an evaluation process for teachers in place that, that's our role as principals, is we're in their classrooms observing and kind of holding them accountable to being and teaching with a neutral perspective there. And there's a whole system for that. I'm not going to go into details, but we're there. I think the biggest thing as a principal is, and I can attest to this in my 20 plus years as a principal in Wyoming, is I welcome parent feedback on curriculum. I've been in a few different schools in Wyoming, and if a parent comes in the door and says, hey, I want to know what's happening in social studies, I want to know what's happening in science, I'm going to tell them. If I don't know, I'm going to bring that teacher down. We're going to sit down and we're going to involve that parent. I mean, I love those conversations. Those are awesome. Would love to get parent involvement like that. And I know in talking with a lot of the principals across the state, they also welcome that. So just from a principal's perspective, no, that's the mindset, and that's really been the practice, at least, for me. And I have been a principal in Fort Washakie and now Evanston for almost 20 years. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Questions from the committee? All right, thank you. Do we have Jennifer Bennett on? Jennifer, can you hear us?
Sorry, it took me a minute to get unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll be as brief as I can. I am a 7th through 12th grade English teacher at Rock River School in Albany County School District 1. My first concern for this bill is that the publication of all instructional materials is not a small request. As a rural educator, I teach 6 classes and often spending hours outside of contracted time working on lesson plans. And as I read this bill, I get the impression that the committee believes that building a spreadsheet would be simple, but I assure you this is not. This is going to take an enormous amount of time outside of my contracted hours, time that I use to build rigorous lessons, engaging content, and give my students meaningful feedback. Now, we worry about transparency, but I've been accused of being the most transparent teacher within our school. I welcome parent feedback. I encourage people. In fact, I even teach wit and wisdom as part of my 7th and 8th graders. And I would welcome questions at any point in time from my parents, and I don't get them very often, but when I do, that is when we build an understanding. My second concern is that the list posted for concerned individuals is that after the list is posted, that concerned individuals are going to skim through the list looking for titles and materials they believe are inappropriate for the classroom, and that they will target items, and that targeted items will simply be identified as individual pieces, and how the item being used within a whole unit will be ignored. I'm also working on a master's of special education, and so I believe for my students that adding individual resources as needed is crucial. And just because I have something on a list does not mean that it was used with a person, with a student. And there's no way for parents to identify, was this used with my student? And I think that's important to understand. And we're going to have a lot of questions from parents going, well, why didn't my kid get this? Well, because each and every kid is different.
Time's up. Okay.
I tried.
From the committee. Okay, we only have time for one more person. I apologize to those of you in the room and to those of you that are still online that we are on third reading and we have to get back up there at when we take we go back into committee or to committee. Well, we got committee of the whole too, but all right. I'm going to call on Emily Bishop. Is Emily still there with us? Emily, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello, Emily.
Hi.
Go ahead, introduce yourself and proceed. We've got 2 minutes.
Hey, my name is Emily Bishop, and I'm a kindergarten teacher in Moorcroft, Wyoming at Moorcroft K-8 school. And I just want to take a minute, Mr. Chairman, to express that if this bill were to be passed, I feel it would be detrimental and a burden to teachers. We are trained professionals, and we're here to do what's best for students. Putting a list of thousands of materials online is not what's best for students. As some of the other educators have stated, we only get a few hours a week for planning, and in that planning time, we have meetings or conferences, whatnot. So, really it takes away, and we don't have much time left in our day. My families know that I have an open door policy. They can come to me at any time and ask me what I'm teaching, what their kids are doing. They get videos or pictures posted to their child's portfolio on Class Dojo almost daily, so they can see exactly what we're learning. I've never had a parent ask me for a list of materials that their children are exposed to. I just feel that it's very unnecessary and it takes away from what we as teachers, as trained professionals do, and that's doing what's best for students.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Questions from the committee? All right, thank you. With that, we're going to close public testimony. And get to the bill. We've had extensive discussion on this bill, I think. How would you like to proceed? Anybody want to move the bill? Yes. Moved by
Move the bill.
by Representative Andrew, second by Nyman. Okay. On the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the bill. And Mr. Chairman, so I would strike all the language on page 1, page 2, page 3. And Mr. Chairman, go down to page 4 of the bill in the duties of the boards of trustee in 23.3.110. And Mr. Chairman, I would add the following language. And it would say, not later, and so this would be a Romanet. I forget what Romanet number it is, but I think it's XL. Mr. Chairman, no later than August 15, 2022, in each school year thereafter, promptly publish on the school district's website the district-approved curricular resources utilized in the instruction of the students in core classes or classes teaching civics for the preceding school year and the upcoming school year. District-approved curricular resources includes instructional resources approved by the district for classroom instruction. Nothing in this paragraph shall prohibit school districts from periodically updating curricular resources As the school year progresses, the curricular resources shall be available in paper form for inspection by any person at reasonable times during regular business hours of the school district. And then Romanet XLI, publish policies regarding the selection and adoption of primary resources and procedures to review and challenge the appropriateness of instructional resources. And like I said, I worked with my school districts on this language, and I believe it is stuff they currently post. I think they have, or they have the ability to post.
Second.
Okay, seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Question has been called. All in favor of Representative Summers' amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No, the amendment is carried. All right, back on the bill. And we do have a copy of the bill that's got the amendment in it. It's probably the easiest one to work from, I think. Representative Harshman.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking at the amendment. I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment we just adopted. And it's on line 23 of the amendment. So line 22 reads, utilized in the instruction of.
Oh, no.
And then I'd just like to take out the students in core classes and classes teaching. So then it would read, utilized in the instruction of civics. I don't think you need to have Algebra 2 resources and all this stuff lumped in with this. I mean, we're trying to get both sides of the Holocaust and, excuse me, but, and all these other, in Guadalcanal, and we're trying, that's what we want to make sure that's, I think, the point of this bill. That's the title of it. So that's my amendment. I apologize for my.
Okay, is there a second on the amendment? Okay. Discussion on the amendment.
Question.
Question is called for. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. The amendment to the amendment is carried. Back on the bill.
Question on the bill.
Okay, question on the bill. Roll call.
Representative Andrew? Aye. Representative Brown?
No.
No?
No.
Representative Connolly?
No.
Representative Harshman?
No.
Representative Nyman?
Aye.
Representative Newsom submitted an absentee of aye.
Okay.
Representative Obermueller?
No.
Representative Summers?
No.
Chair votes aye.
So 4 ayes and 5 noes.
Okay. The motion has been defeated. No further business. The meeting is adjourned.
Good job on that.
Vice Chairman, good job.